Maplewood Lane was the kind of street where the loudest sound most mornings was birdsong or the distant hum of lawnmowers. Children rode bicycles down the sidewalks. Neighbors waved from porches, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee often drifted through open windows. But that calm was broken early Tuesday morning when the flashing lights of police cruisers painted the peaceful neighborhood in red and blue. It began with a 911 call from a concerned neighbor. Mrs. Reed, who lived 2 doors down from the Taylors, noticed something unusual. Ben Taylor, a friendly handyman known for helping fix squeaky gates and leaky taps, hadn't been seen for 2 days. His pickup truck still sat in the driveway, and the house lights had remained off through the night. More concerning was the presence of his young daughter Emily, spotted alone in the front yard. She wasn't crying, she wasn't calling for help. She just stood quietly in her pajamas, holding her stuffed rabbit, looking at the porch. By the time Officer Leah Collins arrived, a small group of neighbors had gathered at a distance, murmuring. In concern, Collins approached the girl gently. "Hi there, sweetheart. My name's Leah. Are you okay?" Emily looked up, her big blue eyes calm but serious. She pointed toward the wooden porch of their modest 1-story home and said plainly, "My dad's under there." The officer blinked. Under the porch. Emily nodded once, clutching her rabbit tighter. Collins crouched down to her level. "When did you see him last?" "He went under yesterday," Emily replied, "and he didn't come back out." By now, backup had arrived. Officer Martinez, a K9 handler, stepped out of his vehicle with Rex, a seasoned German shepherd trained in search and rescue. Martinez had been briefed on the situation, but remained skeptical. Kids sometimes said things that didn't always make sense, especially in stressful situations. Still, he took Emily's words seriously. "Let's have Rex take a look," he said, clipping the leash to his vest. As Rex approached the porch, his demeanor shifted. His nose twitched, ears perked, and within seconds, he began barking sharply and clawing at the wooden boards. Collins exchanged a glance with Martinez. This wasn't just routine behavior. Rex was reacting to something. Meanwhile, Emily was led gently to a neighbor's porch swing where she sat quietly, still watching, still waiting. Martinez knelt beside Rex and gave the signal for a focused search. The dog darted to one side of the porch and began scratching intensely near the latticework. It was just a crawl space beneath the house, hardly 2 feet high, with aging support beams and old insulation. No one had expected a man to be in there. "Let's get the boards up," Collins said, carefully. Within minutes, tools were brought out. Officers used crowbars to lift a few floorboards, while another flashlight beam was cast beneath the dark space. At first, it revealed only dust, old wiring, and cobwebs. Then Rex barked again, this time not in alarm, but as if confirming something specific. He went, pawing toward a shadowy corner of the crawl space. A hushed moment fell over the group, and then came a faint, strained voice. "Help." The officers froze. "Did you hear that?" Collins whispered. "Yeah," Martinez replied. Rex was right. They moved quickly now. A call went out for emergency medical responders as officers carefully maneuvered into the narrow crawl space. What they found was shocking. Ben Taylor, lying flat on his stomach, partially pinned by a collapsed beam. His face was dirty, but his eyes were open. "Hang on, sir, we've got you," an officer said as they began assessing the safest way to pull him out. Back on the porch, Emily simply nodded to herself, as if everything was finally going according to plan. As Rex stood at the porch's edge, tail stiff and ears sharp, everyone nearby could sense that something was off. The experienced K9 was known for being focused, but this time he was frantic. He barked with urgency, digging at the wooden boards, shifting from side to side, as if trying to signal exactly where they needed to look. Officer Martinez tightened his grip on Rex's harness. "Easy, boy. You found him, didn't you?" One of the firefighters knelt beside the porch, using a long flashlight to peer into the crawl space. "It's tight under there," he muttered. "Not much room at all." Then came the groan again, faint, weak, but unmistakably human. "Help, I'm here." That was enough. "Get a team down here now," Officer Collins radioed. "We have a confirmed victim under the porch. Repeat, he's alive." While the emergency crew prepared to widen the opening, Martinez knelt down beside Emily, who sat quietly on the neighbor's porch swing. "You were right, sweetheart," he said gently. "Your dad's really down there." Emily looked up with a soft smile and nodded, hugging her stuffed rabbit tighter. "I told you." Underneath the house, the conditions were far from safe. Ben Taylor was wedged awkwardly in a corner, one arm pinned under a fallen support beam and his legs half-twisted beneath a pile of dirt and debris. He was dehydrated, pale, and disoriented, but conscious. Paramedics slid in a narrow stretcher and worked slowly, making sure not to worsen any injuries. They gave him sips of water, stabilized his neck, and gently maneuvered the beam off his shoulder. Outside, the tension had turned into anxious hope. Neighbors had gathered behind the police tape, watching silently as flashing lights illuminated the scene. Some whispered prayers, others just waited, holding their breath. It took almost 20 minutes, but finally, Ben was pulled from the crawlspace. The crowd broke into soft applause as paramedics rolled him out on the stretcher. Ben blinked against the sunlight and mumbled, "Where's Emily?" "She's safe," one of the EMTs assured him. "She's the reason we found you." As the paramedics secured him in the ambulance, Officer Collins leaned inside and said, "You're a lucky man, Mr. Taylor. Your daughter saved your life." Ben gave a weak, grateful smile before closing his eyes. Meanwhile, Emily was brought closer to the ambulance. She looked tiny next to the tall adults, but when she saw her father strapped to the stretcher, her face lit up. "Daddy." Ben opened his eyes again. His lips trembled as he reached for her. "Hey there, kiddo." Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she stood beside him. "You were really under there. I told them." "You did good," he whispered. The medics gave them a few more moments before they needed to move. As the ambulance doors closed, Rex let out a soft bark, as if acknowledging the moment. Emily turned and gave him a wave. "Thank you, puppy." Rex wagged his tail. The ambulance pulled away, leaving behind a changed neighborhood. What had started as a mystery had ended in a rescue no one would forget. Later that afternoon, Officer Martinez returned to the precinct with Rex, who received extra treats and a long back scratch from the station staff. "That dog," Collins said, shaking her head with a smile, "is a legend." Martinez nodded. He didn't just find a man. He brought a little girl's hope to life. As the sun began to set over Maplewood Lane, the flashing lights were gone. The street was quiet once again, but in every heart, something had shifted. A reminder that sometimes, the smallest voices carry the biggest truths, and that heroes don't always wear badges or uniforms. Sometimes, they wear bunny slippers and carry a stuffed rabbit. Inside the ambulance, Ben Taylor slipped in and out of consciousness. His body was weak from dehydration and the strain of being trapped for nearly 2 days, but he remained aware enough to ask one question over and over: "Is Emily okay?" "She's perfectly safe," the paramedic told him. "She's the reason we got to you in time." Ben nodded slowly. The words barely sank in, but they brought him comfort. Back at the house, emergency crews secured the area around the crawlspace. As more details emerged, the full picture of what had happened began to come into focus. 2 days earlier, Ben had crawled under the porch to repair a leaky pipe. It was something he'd done before. He knew the tight space well, but this time, an old wooden support beam, weakened by age and moisture, had snapped loose. The beam had struck him across the shoulder and back, pinning him in place. At first, he had tried to call for help, but his phone had slipped from his pocket and landed just out of reach. The crawlspace walls, packed with insulation, had muffled his voice completely. No one could hear him, except one person noticed his daughter. Emily had been watching from the living room window that morning, clutching her stuffed rabbit, as she often did. She saw her father disappear beneath the porch and thought nothing of it at first. But as the hours passed and evening fell, her worry grew. She checked the kitchen, the garage, even his workshop. No sign of him. That night, she curled up on the couch with a blanket and waited, thinking maybe he'd come back once she fell asleep. But when morning came and he was still gone, her small world began to crack. "I knew he was under there," she later told the neighbor. "I saw him go in. I never saw him come back out." She tried to use the house phone but didn't understand the buttons. Then she did the only thing she could think of. She went outside and stood by the porch, waiting. That's when Mrs. Reed spotted her and made the 911 call. She didn't cry, Mrs. Reed recalled later. She just stood there and said, "My dad's under there." She said it like it was a fact, and she was right. In the hospital, doctors treated Ben for dehydration, muscle injuries, and minor fractures. They told him he was lucky. Another 12 hours under the porch, and he might not have survived. The first time Emily was allowed into his hospital room, She walked in slowly, carrying her bunny under one arm and a get well card she'd made with crayons. Ben's eyes lit up when he saw her. "Hey, my hero." Emily climbed onto the chair beside the bed. "You didn't come back out," she said quietly. "I know, sweetheart," Ben replied, reaching out to take her hand. "I got stuck. I was calling, but no one could hear me." "I heard you," she whispered, "in my heart." Ben's throat tightened. He blinked hard to keep the tears from spilling over. "You saved me, Em. You really did." The moment was soft, quiet, but powerful. A bond forged in everyday love had become something unbreakable. Later that evening, Officer Collins and Officer Martinez stopped by the hospital to check on them. Rex wasn't with them, but Emily still asked for him. "He's getting some well-earned rest." Martinez smiled, "But he says hi." Collins knelt beside Emily and handed her a sticker badge that read, "Junior Hero. You were braver than some adults we know," she said. "Thank you for speaking up." Emily smiled shyly and looked at her dad. "I just didn't want him to stay stuck." Ben squeezed her hand gently. "Thanks to you, I didn't." News of the rescue spread quickly. By the next morning, the story had already made the rounds on local television and social media. The headline read, "6-year-old girl saves trapped father with remarkable calm and courage." The hospital was filled with flowers, cards, and messages of support. Ben, still recovering from his injuries, was overwhelmed by the kindness. But what moved him the most was the way people were reacting to his daughter. "Your little girl has a gift," a nurse told him. "Most children would have panicked or hidden, but she stayed calm and made sure you were found." Ben smiled weakly. "That's Emily. She doesn't speak much unless she's sure of something, and when she is, she won't budge." When reporters asked Emily how she knew her father was under the porch, her answer was simple: "Because I saw him go in, and he didn't come back out." There was something so clear, so matter-of-fact in her voice, that it struck everyone who heard it. There was no drama, no confusion, just truth. And that was exactly what made her actions so extraordinary. At the police station, Officer Collins was reviewing the case file with her captain. "If that girl hadn't said something, we wouldn't have checked under that porch. It's a tight crawl space, nobody would have thought to look there first. She's the reason we found him in time." The captain agreed. "And that canine of yours, Rex, did a solid job." Martinez, who had just returned from walking Rex, joined them. "It was the girl who led us there." Rex just confirmed what she already knew in her heart. Back at the hospital, Ben was finally able to sit up in bed. Emily sat beside him every day, keeping him company. She brought coloring books, told him about her stuffed animals, and even helped him sip juice through a straw. One afternoon, Ben looked at her thoughtfully. "You weren't scared?" Emily paused a little. "But I knew you didn't leave. You always tell me before you go somewhere." That sentence hit him like a wave. In all the years of raising her alone, Ben had always promised to never leave without saying goodbye. It had become their quiet ritual, one of the ways he helped her feel safe after her mother's passing. And when he broke that routine, she knew something was wrong. "That's how you knew," he said softly. "Because I didn't say goodbye." Emily nodded. "I just waited. Then I told the lady with the badge." Ben reached over and kissed the top of her head. "You're incredible. You know that." Later that evening, the mayor of their small town called personally to check on their well-being. Plans were already being made to recognize both Emily and Rex at the upcoming town hall meeting. "You're going to be on stage," Ben told her with a grin. "They want to give you an award." Emily blinked. "Do I have to talk?" He chuckled. "Just smile. You've already said everything that mattered." Meanwhile, their neighbors were organizing a fundraiser to help cover the cost of repairs to the porch and any medical expenses insurance might not cover. Mrs. Reed, the neighbor who had called 911, told the local news crew that little girl's calm saved her daddy's life. "We just did what anyone would have done to help." By the end of the week, the porch had been blocked off with caution tape, and several volunteers were already planning to rebuild it with safer support beams. A local hardware store donated materials after hearing about what happened, and Rex, he was treated like a celebrity at the precinct, receiving a large bone, a shiny new tag, and even a framed certificate that read, "For outstanding service and heroic detection." The photo of Rex and Emily, taken just after the rescue, was shared over 1,000 times online. In it, she stood beside him in her pajamas, holding her stuffed bunny, while Rex sat tall and proud, his ears perked and tail wagging. To unlikely. Heroes, one with fur, one with a soft voice, but both with hearts full of instinct and love. By the end of the week, the story of Emily and her father had spread beyond their small town. Local papers called it a miracle rescue, while television anchors praised Emily's bravery and Rex's sharp instincts. But to those who lived on Maplewood Lane, the most powerful part of the story was what happened after the rescue. The town of Willow Creek had always been close-knit, but now it seemed every neighbor, friend, and stranger wanted to help. A local diner, Rosie Escalf, put out a tip jar labeled for Emily and her dad and pledged a portion of every pie sold that week to the Taylor family. Within days, over $3,000 had been raised. Ben was stunned when he heard. "I didn't expect this," he said from his hospital bed. "We were just getting by before, and now people are giving so much." "Sometimes," his nurse replied, "when something good touches the heart of a town, they give back with everything they've got." Emily didn't fully understand the buzz around her, but she could sense something had changed. Everywhere she went, whether it was the hospital hallway or the grocery store, people smiled and waved. Some even knelt down to thank her. "You're the little girl who saved your daddy, aren't you?" a woman whispered kindly. Emily would nod, then retreat behind her father's leg if he was nearby. She didn't like attention, but she liked knowing her dad was okay. A few days later, the mayor invited the Taylors to a special town ceremony. At the gathering, a small stage was set up in the park, decorated with yellow ribbons and a banner that read, "Celebrating Real-Life Heroes." Ben, walking slowly with a cane, held Emily's hand as they made their way onto the stage. Officer Martinez stood beside Rex, who looked proud in his freshly brushed coat, his new medal hanging around his collar. The mayor took the microphone. "In our busy lives, it's easy to overlook quiet moments, but this story reminds us that sometimes it's the quiet ones who make the biggest difference." Emily Taylor, just 6 years old, knew something was wrong, and she didn't stop until someone listened. He turned toward her, kneeling slightly as he presented a framed certificate with a gold star. "Emily, for your bravery.com, thinking, and love for your father, we honor you as a junior citizen hero of Willow Creek." Emily took the certificate and looked up at her dad, her grip on his hand tightening. The applause was warm and long. When it quieted, Officer Martinez stepped forward with Rex. "And to our loyal canine, Rex, whose instinct and training helped bring Ben Taylor back to safety, you are not just a partner, you are a hero." He clipped a new badge onto Rex's collar, a golden paw print with the word rescue engraved on it. The crowd cheered again. Ben reached down and patted Rex's head, whispering, "Thank you, buddy, you got me out of there." Later, people gathered for refreshments in the park. Neighbors shared stories, laughed, and surrounded Ben and Emily with kindness. A carpenter who'd heard the story offered to rebuild the damaged porch for free, promising stronger beams and a safe foundation. "That porch is going to be the strongest one in town," he told Ben. "I'll make sure of it." That evening, as the sun dipped low and cast golden light across Maplewood Lane, Ben sat on the front steps of their home, what was left of them, with Emily beside him. He looked at her and said, "You know, I went under there thinking I'd be out in a few minutes, but you brought me back." Emily rested her head on his arm. "I was scared." "I know," he replied, "but you didn't give up. That's what makes you brave." She looked up at him. "Even brave people get scared sometimes, right?" He smiled. "Especially the bravest ones." They sat there for a while in silence, the soft breeze carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass. Life on Maplewood Lane was quiet once again, but in the hearts of its people, the memory of what happened would never be forgotten. In the weeks that followed, Ben Taylor's life slowly returned to normal, but it wasn't the same kind of normal. As before, something had shifted, not just in his body, but in his heart. Every morning felt a little brighter, every meal tasted a little better, and every moment with Emily carried more weight than it ever had. Physically, his recovery was steady. His fractured shoulder had been set in a sling, and his bruised ribs still made it hard to laugh or sleep on his side. But emotionally, Ben was healing in ways no doctor could measure. Being trapped under that porch had shown him just how fragile time could be and how powerful a child's love could become when tested. Emily, too, had changed. She didn't speak of the incident often, but she had started asking questions, thoughtful questions. Why do beams fall? What happens if someone's stuck and no one's around? Can I learn how to use the phone? Ben took every question seriously. He bought a kid-friendly emergency phone and taught her how to use it. He even started teaching her basic safety skills, what to do in different situations, who to call, where to go. "You're already smart and brave," he told her one night, "but being prepared makes you even stronger." They attended a community safety event together, where first responders taught children how to recognize emergencies. Emily surprised the crowd by retelling part of her own story in front of a small group. "My dad didn't come back out from under the porch," she said softly. "So I told the officer, and the dog helped find him." The listeners were moved by her simplicity, by the way she told it without drama, just truth. That had become Emily's way. Rex visited once during her talk, to the delight of every child in the room. Emily rushed over and gave him a gentle hug, whispering, "I missed you." Rex wagged his tail and licked her cheek, as if he missed her, too. Officer Martinez later told Ben, "She's got the heart of someone who sees what others miss. That's rare at any age." At home, Ben continued repairs on the porch with the help of volunteers. The new beams were solid, the structure sound, and the crawl space permanently sealed to prevent future accidents. But one thing remained, a small section of the old porch that Emily asked to keep. On it, she drew a little heart with chalk and wrote, "My dad was here." Ben left it just as it was. Life began to flow again: school, breakfast routines, bedtime stories. But everything felt more meaningful now. Emily insisted on hugging Ben before school every day, even if they were running late. And Ben, who once saw work as a necessity, now chose jobs that allowed him to be home more often. One quiet evening, Ben stood in the backyard, watching Emily run around with a kite. The wind tugged at the string, and her laughter echoed through the yard like music. His heart ached not with pain, but with gratitude. Officer Collins had stopped by earlier that day and left something unexpected, a framed copy of the original 911 report, with a handwritten note at the bottom. "Never ignore a child's voice. This one saved a life." Ben placed it on the wall near the kitchen, where he could see it every morning, not as a reminder of what went wrong, but of what went right. That night, after Emily fell asleep, Ben sat by her bedside, just watching her breathe. The soft glow of her nightlight cast a golden hue across the room. Her bunny lay by her side, the same one she'd carried the day she told the officer where to find him. Ben reached down and gently brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "I don't know how I got so lucky," he whispered, "but I'm never taking your another day for granted again." Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. The streetlights flickered gently, and the stars above Maplewood Lane blinked in silent witness to a home restored, a bond strengthened, and a little girl whose quiet courage had changed everything. As the seasons changed and summer gave way to autumn, the story of Emily, Ben, and Rex continued to live on, not as a news headline anymore, but as a lasting reminder of what had happened on that porch and what it had meant to the entire town. At the Willow Creek Police Department, Rex's rescue had become the centerpiece of training sessions for new canine handlers. Officer Martinez, proud but humble, was often invited to share the story. He always began the same way. It wasn't just a dog who found Ben Taylor. It was a little girl's quiet insistence that led us to look. Rex just helped us believe her. Rex, now approaching his retirement age, was still alert and healthy, but the department decided it was time for him to enjoy a well-earned rest. Martinez had already made up his mind. Rex wasn't just a partner, he was family, and so, with a small ceremony attended by fellow officers and friends, Rex was officially retired and adopted by Martinez and his family. Emily and Ben were guests of honor. Rex trotted proudly into the community hall where the event was held, his new collar polished and a little golden paw tag shining in the lights. Children ran up to him with giggles and open arms. He greeted them all with calm dignity, pausing longest by Emily. She knelt beside him and gave him another hug. "Are you going to be okay without the badge?" she whispered into his ear. Rex licked her cheek gently, and Officer Martinez answered, "For him, he's got a new job, now playing fetch, guarding the backyard, and getting spoiled." Laughter filled the room. That day, the department launched a new initiative inspired by Rex and Emily's story, a program called Little Voices, Big Heroes. It paired police officers and canine teams with elementary schools to teach kids about safety, emergencies, and trusting their instincts. Emily was invited to the very first school visit. She was nervous at first, clutching her dad's hand outside the classroom, But when she walked in and saw the wide-eyed children and the wagging tails of the dogs, she took a deep breath and stood a little taller. She told her story not with big words, but with quiet confidence. She explained how she noticed her dad hadn't come back out, how she waited and remembered what he always told her, about speaking up when something didn't feel right. I just kept saying it until someone listened, she finished. The room fell silent for a moment before a small boy raised his hand and asked, "Weren't you scared?" Emily nodded. "Yes, but I didn't want to stay scared." Ben, watching from the back, felt a wave of pride so strong it nearly brought tears to his eyes. After the talk, the children were invited to meet Rex and other canines south. One teacher told Martinez, "This story has done more to connect kids with officers than anything we've tried before. It's real, and they understand it." Emily continued to appear at other sessions, never pushing herself to the spotlight, but always ready to help. The program flourished, and the bond between the police, the community, and its youngest members deepened. Back at home, life was simple. Again, meals at the kitchen table, evening walks, bedtime stories, but nothing felt quite like it used to. It all felt fuller, deeper, as if every ordinary moment had become extraordinary. In its own quiet way, Ben started writing in the evenings, just little notes at first, then full pages. Eventually, those pages began to take shape as a short book he titled, "Under There, The Day My Daughter Saved Me." He didn't write it to become famous or to profit from the event. He wrote it so Emily would always remember what she didn't, so other parents might listen a little closer when their children speak. Rex, meanwhile, spent his days lounging in Martinez's backyard, occasionally chasing butterflies and barking at squirrels. But when Emily came to visit, he'd perk up and run to her like the old days. They'd sit together under the shade of a maple tree, Emily with her rabbit and Rex resting beside her. No medals, no ceremony, just friendship and memory. And though neither of them would ever say it out loud, both seemed to understand something deeply, that sometimes the strongest bonds are formed in moments of silence, moments where instinct, love, and trust do the talking. A full year had passed since the day Emily pointed to the porch and said those 6 unforgettable words, "My dad's under there," and yet, for the Taylor family, it felt as vivid and real as if it had happened yesterday. Ben and Emily stood together in front of a small crowd gathered at Willow Creek Park. The town had planned a one-year anniversary event not to relive a terrifying memory, but to celebrate the courage, love, and resilience that had come out of it. On a little stage decorated with sunflowers and hand-painted signs from local schoolchildren, Emily and Ben were introduced once again, this time, not as victims of a near tragedy, but as symbols of hope. The mayor stepped forward to greet them. Some stories fade, others stay with us forever. The day Emily Taylor saved her father reminded us all of the power of paying attention and the strength found in even the smallest voices. Ben gave a short, humble speech. He kept his eyes on Emily the entire time. "I didn't realize how quickly life can change," he began, "or how easy it is to overlook little signs that mean a lot. My daughter didn't just notice I was missing, she believed in what she saw. She trusted her instincts. And because of that, I'm standing here today." The crowd applauded, not with thunderous noise, but with warmth, slow, genuine claps that came from the heart. When it was Emily's turn to speak, she held her dad's hand and approached the microphone. She was taller now, more confident, but still carried her stuffed bunny tucked under one arm. She took a breath. "I just knew something was wrong, and I didn't stop saying it until someone listened." That was all she needed to say. That sentence carried all the weight of the story, and everyone there knew it. After the speeches, the town unveiled a small plaque near the park's playground. It read, "In honor of Emily Taylor and Canine Rex, who reminded us that love, courage, and listening carefully can change the world one voice at a time." Beneath the plaque was a carved stone bench, placed beneath a maple tree. On it was engraved a simple quote from Ben's recently published book, "She found me not with noise, but with certainty." The book, Under There, The Day My Daughter Saved Me, had quietly become a local favorite. Copies were in every school library and often used during safety awareness weeks across the county. Ben had donated all proceeds to support canine training, programs, and children's emergency education. Back at home, life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The rebuilt porch was sturdy and safe, and the heart Emily had drawn in chalk had been preserved with a layer of clear sealant. It remained there as a quiet monument, a reminder of everything they'd been through. Emily had started journaling, just like her dad. She often wrote short stories, usually about animals who saved the day, or little girls who saw things others missed. Her teacher called her a storyteller with heart. Ben, watching her grow, often felt overcome with quiet gratitude. The event that nearly took him away had become a moment that bonded them deeper than ever before. They still visited Rex often. The old dog, now fully retired, spent his days napping under shady trees, chasing the occasional butterfly, and keeping a soft eye out for Emily whenever she visited. When she came through the gate, he still wagged his tail just as wildly as he had the day he found Ben under the porch. As father and daughter sat on the bench near the playground one evening, watching the sunset, Ben wrapped an arm around Emily's shoulders. "You know," he said, "sometimes people ask if we're tired of telling the story, but I never get tired of remembering what you did." Emily looked up at him. "I didn't do anything big. I just said something." "And that," Ben replied with a smile, "was everything." The breeze blew gently through the trees, rustling the leaves above them, and in that golden moment, with the sun dipping low over Maplewood Lane, they knew that the story might have ended, but the love that saved it would live on forever.